Justen Schafer, CEO and founder of the Odysseus Foundation. So, how did it all start for you?
Well, it all started about 7 years ago, well, longer than that, but officially 7 years ago when I moved to Greece from Washington, D.C. to work with a cancer organization in northern Greece. Um, and my job there was to work to set up kind of grassroots organizations, support groups
Uh-huh.
in the Middle East and Africa. So really sort of on the level, breast cancer and cervical cancer survivors and trying to bring them together to share the stories. And part of that job as well was to then work with the governments and developing the support organizations and medical infrastructure further. So that was sort of my professional link into breast and cervical cancer. A few years before, a dear friend of mine was diagnosed with breast cancer and worked with her on setting up an organization in New York. So I've always been involved with this sort of element. After I left the organization and moved to England, I remained on the board of the organization in Greece, and then with everything going on with the financial climate, we made the decision to basically look to see how we could secure the financial viability of the center in Greece, as whilst also expanding into further fields. So that's the sort of generic background of how it all started. So um, we are the only ones doing what we're doing specifically for breast and cervical cancer, especially in the
Well,
UK.
that's right, because if you don't mind me cutting in
Oh,
there, the
go on.
charity focuses on breast and cervical cancer in women in developing countries. But why did you choose to take that direction?
Well, yeah, it's developing countries and socially excluded communities within developed countries. So in Greece, for
Okay.
example, we're working with the migrant populations and immigrant population and the refugee populations that have found themselves in the area. Um, I mean, it's a diff. I mean, it's an odd. I know it's an odd thing for me as a male as well to be involved with this, but
True.
the women that I've met along the way, and again, I've several friends of mine and several close friends and relatives have had breast cancer, and really the message we're trying to get out there is that look, yes, it's a woman focused disease, but the impact is larger than that, and that it actually does affect more than just women, and especially in these cultures, if you remove a woman from the situation, from a community, the impact is massive, and the sort of domino effect then is going forward. Um, and especially in the developing countries where HPV causes is about 99% of the cause for sorry, it's human papillomavirus for cervical cancer, and
And
85.
how did you go about building the team and getting the support that's needed?
Well, calling in a lot of favors, to be honest. I've been involved with charities and I've been involved with setting up charities, so I knew what was needed, and I knew it wasn't a small feat, especially setting up a charity in a global recession. So
Yeah, yeah.
it was sort of the first year was calling in, getting our corporate support lawyers and getting that sort of engagement, that conversation going on, and marketing and PR and that all of those elements that people aren't necessarily, they weren't willing to give money initially, but they were happy to give their time. So it was a sort of
Which
a,
is priceless, really, isn't it?
well, exactly, and the corporate support we've had to date has been, I mean, if we were to pay for that, that would be upwards of several hundred
Yeah.
thousand pounds. So building the team, it's a constant sort of migration depending on what the needs are, but we've got a lot of good volunteers and a lot of good corporate support that are willing to support what we're doing.
But also, Justin, it's been said that charity starts at home, especially now as people are tightening those belts. So, what do you say to that, Justin?
Well, I think that's true. I think that we as human beings are conditioned to want to give back and want to help out and want to support. We all have different causes that are close to each other's hearts. But I think especially now that everyone is going through difficult times, um, that it's important to remember those that are less fortunate, as well as then looking at ways that we can creatively deal with complex situations. that don't necessarily require a lot of money. The work that we do does not require, because of the volunteer support and the corporate support in the areas where we're working, there's not a lot of money that's needed to do what we're doing to have a greater impact. So, um, I'm a firm believer that in humanity, and that people do have good hearts, and that people do generally want the best for what people, and looking out for people in need. Um, Again, here is one of my ramblings. I'm apologizing now, so you can edit this one
Not
out.
at all.
So,
But would you say then, Justin, that would you say that you're a philanthropist? Would
I
you
don't think.
describe yourself as that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of philanthropy, especially in the UK media, has had kind of a bad rap recently with the government's, the charity tax, and are philanthropists tax dodgers, are they or not? I'm not a philanthropist in the case of financially. I don't have the resources to give, but I would probably say
But
I'm more.
manpower, isn't it? It's manpower you're giving.
Yeah, and I think it's more of social philanthropy, or kind of a social entrepreneur, rather than a philanthropist, I would say. But philanthropy is, it's the giving, and it's the sort of aspect of a heart, and that's something I've always wanted. That's been meaningful to me, is the whole giving back, and not leaving the world the same as when I entered, which has always been something that's been important to me in my professional life.
I think, like you say, it's like leaving your mark. But what were the obstacles you came across when setting up Odysseus, and how did you deal with the challenging moments?
Well, from a public standpoint, the biggest obstacle we've come across is just raising awareness to let people know that actually this is an issue. That actually women who are living with HIV are actually dying of cervical cancer, and 85% of deaths are happening in the developing country, and breast cancer is an issue because all that we're hearing in the media is famine and malaria and HIV, which are all important and all relevant. So we're just trying to say, okay, well, look, this is what's going on, and in fact, it's a fairly easy fix if it's handled correctly, and if it's handled early enough.
And I
Um,
think, like you say, health is a human right. But now the charity aims to work in, if I get this right, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and South America. Have you actually been to these countries and checked out the situations?
yes, I mean, I've got a long list of countries that we've got various aspects of communication with. And that's another obstacle we have. So we've been supporting, not financially, but we've been supporting kind of with in-kind support and management support, a project in Pakistan. And the issue with Pakistan is, yes, there's breast cancer, but the media weren't allowed to actually put the word breast in media. So how do we raise awareness, and how do we change that sort of cultural? How do we overcome that, um, and be able to then raise awareness with that? So from my previous life, and previous connections, I have done quite a lot of work in areas that actually people aren't allowed to go now, like Syria. Did quite a lot of work in Syria and Turkey, and in Africa as well. So I have the sort of, and that's partly I think what's driving me as well. Is I've been there, I've been on the ground, I've seen the women, I've heard the stories, and those have stayed with me, throughout my, the last 7 years. Really, just in the back of my head is just thinking, okay, well, if these are some of the stories, there's going to be hundreds more stories, and we need to try to get out there, and try to make a difference.
It's a very ambitious project. And have you set goals for where you'd like to be in a year's time, or 2 years from now, Justin?
Yeah, we've just launched an initiative called the Big Screen, and that whole thing is to screen 40,000 women by 2015, and educate a further 60,000 women by 2015.
Brilliant.
So really, the impact of 100,000 women, by 2015, will have either been screened or been told where to go to screen, and how to do self checks. And so that's the big push we're doing now, and that's the again, we're able to do that for the equivalent of £16 a woman. So it's not a massive amount when you think about, okay, well, 25,000 women a year will have impact directly from the organization. So last year we were able to screen 8,000 women and do outreach to a further 12,000. So in our first year, that wasn't a bad run.
That's quite impressive. It's quite impressive. I
So
must ask you, while we've still got this connection, it's been behaving itself relatively. What's your ultimate dream, Justin?
I think ultimately, our underlining ethos is that health is a human right, and that is something that I'm very passionate about. And um, talking to a lot of human rights organizations, and there's all these different elements that are human rights, but health isn't on there. And how can we say that? Okay, you've got access to good quality, low cost healthcare, regardless of where you live, and that's our ultimate message. And yes, breast and cervical cancer is one aspect with that, but how can we work with other organizations in the healthcare world to try to bring this to light? And even in America, there's the whole thing about the Obamacare, and even in developed countries, healthcare isn't necessarily a human right or an afforded opportunity. So if we can push that onto the platform, then I will be a happy duck.
That's wonderful. And I must say, on the final note, that just to remind us, where can we find more information about this Odysseus Foundation?
Well, the easiest way is obviously our website. It's odysseus.org, which odysseus.org. We've also got a mobile app for the iPhone. So if you just Google or if you search for Odysseus in the Apple Store, it's free to download. So that's going to be the best way to keep in touch with what we've got going on.
We'll make sure we put those details on the screen so people can check out the organisation and hopefully give some support as well to it. Justen Schafer, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you
Thank you,
today.
Anna. You as well.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.